Okay, so here we've got a 1983 Honda CR60 motor. So I've never rebuilt one of these before, but what I do know, as some of you will already know, is that you can't buy the pistons anymore. So you have to use a KX65 piston, which I have got, and I've had the barrel needed a rebore anyway, so I've had the barrel rebored. You might have seen yesterday I rebuilt the crank. I was showing some of the issues with the crank. There was no side-to-side clearance on the big end at all, so that's probably why it had seized in the first place. So anyway, so I've done that, and then the bit that I wanted to video, which is this bit. So the piston's going to need modifying, but also I believe that the piston, I haven't got the original pistons go off, so I don't know exactly what I'm building it to. But what I know is that on the inlet, on the KX60 or 65, it must have a crankcase inlet manifold, so it goes directly down into the crankcase, rather than using the piston as the port, which is kind of what this engine uses. So you've got the inlet manifold here, and the inlet goes directly into the barrel, so the piston goes up, and when it goes up past that, then that's what the fuel comes into. So on the KX60 it must bypass the piston, it must go directly in, because this piston here is pretty much the same in inlet and exhaust side. So I know that these pistons, you have to cut a section out here, but I'm not sure where to cut that. And then the other thing that I believe is that these pistons are slightly taller than the original CR60 ones. And so what I'm told is that you need to put a thicker base gasket on to get the deck height of the piston right. So what I need to do is I need to get that bit right first, before I can then draw on the piston and then machine or cut the section of the piston away that I'm going to need to cut away. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to have a look at the deck height with the stock base gasket, and then I'm going to see what base gaskets I need to use, or one single base gasket to get the deck height right, so it's not going to hit the head, etc, etc. So that's what I'm going to do that bit first, and then we'll look at drawing on the piston and then cutting away a section of the piston to make sure that it runs. So I'm not sure how well you can see that, but that's the standard base gasket, and the piston is clearly above the top of the barrel. It's not hugely above, but it is probably 3/4 of a mil there. So I have got some 80. So I'll need to measure this base gasket, and then I'll need to see what other base gaskets I've got. Maybe I'll take that off and remeasure it. Yeah, that's what I'll do. I'll take that base gasket off, and then I'll torque it back down again without a gasket on, and then I'll measure how high that is protruding above, and then I can see what gasket papers I've got, and then make something right. And then the other bit, which hopefully you can see, so that's the piston at the top. Okay, and so when it comes down, it does open. When it goes up, it does open, but it's not opening the whole lot. So I'm thinking that I need to cut that section there out that's still there, so effectively like a little section to clear that, to just give it that bit of extra inlet area to allow more fuel and air in. So we'll get the base gasket bit sorted first, and then we'll look at that bit next. Okay then, so that's exactly what I've done. So I've tightened the barrel down with no base gasket on it, and then I've brought the piston right up to the top, and then I've got a gap here, and then it's difficult to do with the camera, but basically I've used that part of the vernier gauge, and I've measured that gap there, and then so that measures almost exactly 1.5. It was like 1.52 or something like that. And then I'm going to measure the thickness of the head gasket, and then thickness of some gasket papers, and then so I just want a fraction of clearance at the top, so I need at least 1.5, and then if I can get at least 1.5, and that's cumulative with the head gasket and some gasket paper, then that is going to crush down a bit as well, so maybe I want a bit more than the 1.5, like 1.75 or something would be ideal. So we'll try and go for that, and then let's see where we can get to. Okay, so if I use the head gasket, and then I've got this like kind of medium thickness paper, and then this paper, so I'm going to have two base gaskets in there, and get to about 1.7, so it's just shy of 1.7, so I think that'll be about right. So I'm going to use the stock base gasket as a template, and I'm going to draw around that and then cut it, and then I can punch out the holes, and then we do that with the two gasket papers, and then we'll put them on and then torque it down, and then see where we're up to with the head. When the head's on there, make sure it doesn't clatter with the head, and then we can look at modifying the piston. Okay, so as always, I didn't get a chance to finish this on Friday. Other stuff got in the way. I've cut the gaskets, so I've had to use two. I thought I had a 1mm gasket paper, but I didn't. I had a 1.5, which was too thick. I didn't bother cutting that out. I knew it was going to be too thick. And then I had a 0.8 and a 0.2. So I've cut those out, and then that the piston, the deck height of the piston is absolutely bang on that. So that's literally just at the top of the barrel there, perfect. And then so now the big job that we've got to do is we've got to look at modifying the piston. So that's the inlet manifold, that's the piston right at the top. So I'm going to have to make some kind of cutaway here, because otherwise it's going to not take in, which will obviously affect horsepower. And then so I'm going to have to bring the piston down, and then I want to mark at the bottom of the piston the widest part here. And I also want to bring the piston right down to the bottom, and then mark the bottom here to make sure that any modifications that I do aren't going to affect. So there's not going to be still an opening as the piston is at the bottom. So I just need to make sure of those things. So that's what I'm going to do first of all. I'm going to make those marks, and then I'm going to take the piston out, and then we'll have a look at those marks, and then we'll just decide what best way, what shape to create, and what best way to actually make those shapes. Okay, so there's all the marks that I've made. I did them with a scribe, but you wouldn't be able to see them. So basically, when the piston's down at the bottom, then this is the edge. So we need to stay away from that edge. So this is when the piston's at the top. This is the top of the inlet manifold, and then these are the two wider points. So what we really want to do is we really want to make the cut that goes across here and comes slightly above the inlet, but doesn't touch this. And then the same on this side. So I was toying with drilling a hole here, but I'm not sure that that's the right option. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get a ruler, and I'm going to draw up to here. I'm just going to come slightly above the inlet. I'm going to draw again on this side, and then I'm going to use a grinder, a die grinder, and to just grind that material away, and hopefully make it as nice and neat as possible. Should be able to do a pretty decent job, and then that should then sort the inlet issue out. Shouldn't take too long to do, really. Nice soft material. And then so we once that's done, then we can stick the piston in, and then put the top back on it, and then the thing can go back in the bike. I'll have to go and pick the bike up, and unfortunately I've not got my van, so I'm going to have to try and lift the bike up. So anyway, that's a different issue. I'm pretty pleased with that, really. Hopefully you'll see a picture of it when it's out of the barrel. So that clears perfectly when it's gone up to the top, and then we've got a decent gap from where it's going to be at the bottom, and then it's just giving us that extra bit of volume as it goes up and down with the cutouts either side. So that's absolutely bang on. Couldn't have really wanted to do a better job than that. Perfect job. So I've cleaned up the edges of the cuts and everything like that, so it's not going to have any excessive wear on the barrel or anything like that. All nice and smooth. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to take the barrel back off. I haven't put the clips in or anything like that. I just wanted to check where we were up to, and then I'll put some Vaseline on the base gaskets, and then torque the barrel down, and then we can just get the head put on, and then I'll nip and pick up the rest of the bike, and then hopefully we can have that finished today. You may already realise this, but I'm having flipping microphone troubles. The good microphone that I bought, the little lightning port snapped off it. So anyway, so I've bought another microphone thinking that that'll do, and it appears that it makes ridiculous noises. So I'm doing this without a microphone because I just filmed it running, and I've just listened back to it, and as soon as you rev it, it just doesn't pick up the sound at all. So hopefully this will be fine. I'll have to get back to the microphone job at some point, but I ain't doing that today. I'm annoyed with it. Anyway, engine's built, back in the bike. I have fired it up. It was a little bit smoky, but I did use decent amounts of two-stroke oil in the build, just to make sure there's plenty of lubrication in there, so that won't burn off really until it's had a proper good amount of fuel through it, and especially at like mid to high range revs, it just won't wash it through properly. So anyway, we'll get her fired up now for you. You can hear her running. She sounds great. Really tough. I will heat cycle it a couple of times, and then I'll just retorque the head and the barrel bolts, and then yeah, sounds amazing. Really chuffed with that job. Please like this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Just search Phoenix Motos.